Admiral's Log, April 7th, 2016. Today, Variety announced that Cloak and Dagger is coming to television. It's coming to broadcast TV, and it's not going to be done as a Netflix show or any kind of a streaming show. Cloak and Dagger was a show that I kind of expected we would see at some point, even though they are kind of obscure characters. It made a lot of sense to me for a serialized TV show that, again, would go to a streaming service, and I certainly wouldn't have expected it to go to broadcast TV, but that's what's happening, and it's not going to ABC alongside Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the new Marvel's Most Wanted show. It's going to Freeform, or what used to be called ABC Family. Freeform. I still think that's a super hokey name for a TV network, but anyway, I guess ABC Family is out now because we're not trying to gear that material toward families so much as a younger teenage demographic, and so it's kind of like a Disney Channel teenage fare, and that's where it's going to go. A lot of people are, I'm reading already, kind of disappointed with this development. Would have hoped to see, if Cloak and Dagger were getting a series, that it would be on Netflix or maybe even ABC, but folks are immediately like, oh, it's going to be one of those teen shows, so it's probably going to be really dumbed down and a lot of forced drama and really over the top teenage melodrama and a super angsty kind of high school show. But there is a certain logic to this for a couple reasons. One of them is Cloak and Dagger is a teenage thing, certainly, or at least it starts that way. Tyrone and Tandy are like 17 and 16, I think, respectively, and they're kids that are in the street and having making war on drug crime. And I could see the potential in making this a show that is geared toward teens and trying to create good role models in teenagers that are living on the street and have superpowers, and that's something that we have not really seen with Marvel Studios stuff yet. I should also mention that this may go without saying, but in case you're wondering, this is going to be within, as far as I can tell, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it is a Marvel Studios thing, and it's Disney and it's ABC, so I'd be really surprised if it was a standalone thing, although there's nothing confirmed for sure about that, but everything else that Disney's doing Marvel, with the exception of, I guess, Big Hero 6 in animation, is part of that universe, so it would be really strange if this wasn't. I also think it makes some kind of sense to make a show like this and gear it toward teenagers, because we don't really have that yet. We haven't really had the show or the Marvel movie thing in Marvel Cinematic that is geared toward that demographic. We have, and we don't have any like really a little kid fare in it either, but we've been seeing how versatile these properties are and how many different sorts of people and different sorts of genres that different people it appeals to, and different sorts of genres that you can do the stuff in. So we've got the mostly kind of lighthearted cinematic movies that are kind of family fare and for the most part for everybody, although even that there's a little bit of a range. And then you have the Netflix shows that so far have been dark and gritty and very rated R and not for everybody, skews for an older, more mature audience. Maybe it's high time that we had the teenage Marvel drama, especially given that that's where a lot of Stan Lee Marvel stuff started from. A lot of Marvel's popularity, of course, comes from Spider-Man. And Spider-Man was a teenage drama, and of course we are getting Spider-Man in the Civil War movie, and he's going to get his own movie soon, so we are going to have that in the big budget movies, but that's going to be a thing that's going to have to be more accessible for everybody and not just be geared toward teenagers. And I'm not saying that you can't make a thing, of course, that is more accessible and for a larger audience, but to make something that is specifically kind of speaking for teenagers, and then make it smart, make it layered so that other people can enjoy it and maybe just be brought back to when they were teenagers. I mean, just make it a coming of age story. it seems like it makes a lot of sense, since we can't have a Spider-Man TV show, that you would take something like Cloak and Dagger and do the next best thing. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was theoretically supposed to be kind of the next best thing to having Avengers every week, and then with Agent Carter, we've got a direct spin-off from Captain America and doing the spy thing. So it makes a lot of sense to me to do a thing like this, but I wish it wasn't on broadcast television in general, because I feel like it's liable, and who knows, but it's liable to, just like with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., be a really drawn-out thing in order to get a 22-episode order. Maybe they'll make it a shorter thing like Agent Carter, but I would be really surprised, especially it immediately getting the green light and Freeform not even waiting for a pilot. I imagine they're just looking for material. The nice thing about it being on a network like this as opposed to ABC is that you don't have to worry so much about cancellation, because the numbers that they require to keep a show on are much smaller. So that's good, but it also, being on a network like that, means that it's not going to have the budget behind it that it would if it was on ABC, or something like, Supergirl on CBS. And that could be potentially troubling. What I wish was that it was a Netflix drama like the other Netflix shows, that it was a 13-episode order. I mean, I saw an April Fool's Day joke the other day that had a list of alleged confirmed shows, and Cloak and Dagger was one of them. And how irritating is it that Cloak and Dagger actually is getting greenlit, and this is not a joke, but it's not a Netflix thing. It's gonna be probably more dumbed down, at least common denominator. Maybe we'll be surprised, and it'll be a more smart and sophisticated show, but I would be surprised if that were the case, being on that network. But put it on Netflix and still make it a teenage drama and gear it toward that audience, but make it really smart. The thing that I'm kind of excited about with this, though, is that it's a, like, besides just being a teen drama thing and coming of age and all of that, it's something else that we don't have in superhero fare right now. And given that we've got this huge culture for superheroes on screen right now, that we've got this onslaught right now, why not try to cover everything if we're going to put them out, and if they're successful? And I still say it's fine to have a ridiculous amount of them if they're good and if people are watching them. And of course, some of them are good and some of them are not so good right now. But with regards to Cloak and Dagger, you've got a couple things that you don't have on TV right now. First of all, teenage superheroes. There's still talk at Fox about an X-Men show. That's still supposed to happen, so you'll probably be kind of filling that void there also. But you've got teenage superheroes, and you've got a you've got a couple that stay together, and you've got so much forced drama in a lot of these shows with this whole will they, won't they thing, that it might be refreshing if they keep Cloak and Dagger together, like is usually done in the comics, to have a couple that might have their spats and might have their difficulties, but they, by and large, are a healthy couple and get along, and can get past the irritating TV stereotype, especially of teenage angsty dramas, that you can't let people stay together for too long because then the audience gets bored. Now, the audience gets bored when you string us along, We get bored when we're asked to watch these characters for 3 seasons, go back and forth, and you keep jerking us around with gimmicks and shock value moments. And maybe we won't have that as much with this. So that's neat. And it's the right time, and hopefully the show takes full advantage of this, because Cloak and Dagger have dealt with Doctor Strange quite a bit in the comics, and Cloak and Dagger have dealt with Spider-Man quite a bit in the comics, and you could potentially play with a lot of those worlds in Marvel Cinematic with doing the, again, teenage superhero drama stuff, but also maybe bring some of the mysticism in. And of course, Cloak and Dagger are traditionally not mystical characters. They're mutants, or well, it was retconned because initially Cloak and Dagger got their powers from a serum they were injected with, I think, and then it was retconned and said that they were actually mutants all along, and that just awakened their powers, which is weird because that's not how that usually happens. And by 16 or 17, you usually have your powers already, and Professor Xavier would be knocking on your door saying, "Hey, would you like to come to my school?" But then you have the ultimate version of them that it's that experiment again. And I would imagine that's how they'll do it in this. I hope they don't make them Inhumans, just personally, unless we were to make it a spin-off from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but that's clearly not what they're doing. So I don't know. I kind of hope they're not Inhumans. I think just, do the serum thing and let them get their powers because of a science experiment or an accident, because, well, not an accident, but a science experiment, because we've done a lot of science fiction stuff with Marvel Cinematic, and that's how we tend to kind of get characters there. For a while, I wasn't even sure who owned Cloak and Dagger, because they're not really an X-Men thing, but they were mutants, so it's interesting that Marvel has, the rights to them. I don't know if this is a thing that'll fly. Again, on that network, it'll be easier to keep it on. I think just because it's a Marvel thing and a superhero thing doesn't necessarily mean that people will watch it, especially with so much stuff vying for people's time now. But that teenage audience might be enticed by it because it's about teenagers, and it's one of these, angsty teenage dramas, and if it's sold right, or at least if it's sold to them in that kind of typical CW way, then that might help it to get some legs. But of course, again, that's not what I would have liked to have seen with it. I think you can totally go after that audience and, again, still make it interesting and layered and complex enough that adults will want to watch it too. And that's Spider-Man. That's good Spider-Man. So anyway, that's all I have to say about it. It's not a thing that I'm immediately super jazzed about. And again, I'm a little bit disappointed because I was hoping that would be a Netflix thing. I like Cloak and Dagger. They're not characters that I'm like a giant fan of or know a ton about, but I've liked them in things that they popped up in, and they go back to some of my earlier recollection of comics because they were in Maximum Carnage, and that's where I first met them, and I thought that they were really mysterious and interesting. And again, I really liked that bond that they have together, that really strong, stable relationship. And I've liked them a lot in Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man stuff also. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and this concludes today's Admiral's Log.